Okay, call to order the October 7 meeting of the Caribou Planning Board. First item on the agenda, approval of the September 2 meeting minutes.
Make a motion we accept September 2nd minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on approving the minutes? All in favor? Pass. Is there any new business to come before us today? Hearing none. Any old business?
Just an update on the medical marijuana ordinance. Presque Isle is also looking at theirs,
Yes.
and so in talking with their manager, we're going to try and work together. So
Good.
that the
That's good.
ordinances are identical or
Comparable, yep.
Right. So him and I have been having some conversations on that to make sure that whatever we present is somewhat similar.
That's great.
Awesome.
Good. Okay, under old business, Chapter 13 rewrite. Shall we dive right in? I'd like to go through this one page at a time, just asking if anybody, I don't know, I don't want to read it, I just want to, I mean, I've already done that, and I'm hoping everybody else has also. Just ask if they have any questions or corrections on any of the items. I noticed on page 5 in paragraph 1, introduction, the strikeout in the next to last sentence. I thought the words "and then" should also be struck out. Anybody-
Yeah, you're right.
Anybody else have anything on page 5? Page 6? Anybody have anything on page 6? I had a question under E, the contour intervals. If you look at the contours are also discussed on page 9 and 10, and on page 9, they refer to the fact that the contours are the elevations of the property above sea level in number 14.
That's the standard way of presenting them.
Right, and when I first read E on page 6, I put in the margin elevation changes, question mark. There's no mention of elevations in that, and I would hope that somebody doesn't interpret 10-foot intervals to be distance as opposed to elevation. That it should be, you know, the contour lines typically depict elevation. And the word elevation does show up on page 9, number 14. It does not show up on page 10, item 26C. Again, contour lines on the plan shall be at interval no less than 10 feet. I'm thinking, you know, I wrote after that 10 feet of elevation change, or something to that effect.
Well, you can, it just makes good sense on page 6E, after 10 foot, to put in the word elevation.
To be drawn at 10-foot elevation intervals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Anybody who's looked at a map doesn't need to know that, but it's good for clarity.
Or we could just, what about having it just have what it has on page 9, number 14 at the end of it, says showing the elevations in relation to mean sea level. That way it's consistent all the way across. That way there's no room for any other interpretation otherwise.
Give me a minute. I'm going to take back what I said. I think 6E is fine the way it is.
the way it is?
Yep.
Well, why'd you change your mind?
Because 14 on page 9 makes it perfectly clear.
So you don't think,
I
and then would you leave 10, page 10,
haven't got there yet.
26C?
I'd leave it all alone, because frankly, anybody who's reading these regulations is gonna be either an engineer or a landowner who works with an engineer, and if they don't know what a contour interval is, we're in trouble.
Well,
The contour intervals are,
you're presuming that they're gonna work with an engineer, and I know, I would think there may be some do-it-yourselfers that would try to complete this on their own.
you start with a copy of the USGS topo map.
Yep,
That's got the contour intervals already there.
yes, it would.
So, I mean, it's moot. Nobody's gonna be drawing them in, they're gonna be on the map.
Do,
The actual definition of contour line is a line on a map joining points of equal height above or below sea level.
Yeah.
So,
oh,
by definition, it's elevation.
okay. Well, we'll leave it as is then?
I would.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had on page 6. Page 7. Anybody, anything?
The only thing that I thought we had changed is under H, 2 prominent places that we would display. I thought we changed that to 1. Am I wrong with that, or? Yep, that's in a couple different spots, so I don't, so I had it on electronic version that I was looking at, so I'm just gonna take it, squeezing through there, but.
We have changed the 2 to 1?
In the previous chapter, we did.
Okay.
So we'll make that change so it's reflected everywhere.
Good catch.
Now, do we wanna specify the Republican, or are we just gonna risk that they won't go away and we won't have to revise it later?
Is the Republican on that page?
Yeah,
It is on
seven.
H.
Because elsewhere, further in, there's a reference to the heuristic Republican, and I, on my copy, changed that to the local Caribou paper, so that it's generic and not specific. Because someday, you don't know, the Caribou Republican and the Presque Star Herald may be combined into one paper.
If we could, and that's a good catch, if we could go with the terminology of a paper of general circulation within the city, that's kind of how state statute
Sure.
requires public hearings for those.
Yeah, I think we should get away from a specific
Right.
Right.
paper. Who knows, it might get sold and become the heuristic Democrat.
That's not too likely.
Okay, on page 8, I questioned why you want to strike out the first line, "A copy of the notice shall be mailed to the applicant." Because this is what is being sent to the, is this what's being sent to the landowners? There's a couple of places where you're striking out sending the hearing notice to the applicant. And if I were the applicant, I kind of would like to see or get a copy of what everybody else is getting, just so that I know what they're getting. I mean, was it to, was there any particular reason we don't want to mail it? Are we just trying to save a stamp, or?
The only reason why was because they would know what the project is, they would be aware of the hearing, rather than.
The other ones
require-
were basically requesting.
Right. Rather than mailing them a copy of them, they should know, and we would obviously schedule the hearing in conjunction with them to make sure they can be here at that hearing. That was-
Oh, so the notice is just a notice of the meeting, it doesn't contain data about the meeting subject? Or,
It will give a general
Very general.
description, so if somebody wants to put
Okay.
a subdivision at whatever
yeah,
address or what general area, it would say to hear about a proposed subdivision at approximately 123 Sesame Street or wherever.
okay. Well, okay. We'll leave leave it struck out. The, further down on page 8, item 2C, 10 full-size sets. Any particular reason why 10 as opposed to 5 or 7 or?
2C10.
Now, on page 12, I believe we're asking, on page 12, 2A, we're asking for 7 copies, but these are also reduced size as opposed to full size on page 8.
Right, so I believe the reason there for 10, which is not changed, because there's 7 planning board members, the code enforcement officer and the building official would be 9, and then we have 1 for the file. So I
Okay.
believe
Yeah,
that's.
you need to have one somewhere the public can look at too,
Right,
which could be the file one.
right.
Okay.
So that's why, or that's my understanding of why it would have 10 originally.
My only concern about, yeah, I guess my issue was the cost of full size. I mean, when, again, if you've hired an engineering firm, then they have a plotter or printer that
You can just
spits
press
out 24-inch paper. But if you haven't got that and you gotta go find someone, I mean, they're gonna charge you, you know, $20 a page or something like that. You know, I've been there before.
But I don't see a subdivision as a
yeah.
process happening without an engineer. of some sort.
Subdivision plan is not a DIY.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need a civil engineer just to design the roads and the drainage.
Right.
Anything else on page 8? Anything on page 9?
Comma's in the wrong spot on 7, number 17.
Number 17, commas in the wrong
Just
spot.
because it's.
Oh, parks, oh, it should be,
It's just.
yeah.
That's an artifact of the word processing.
Well, actually, there should be a space between the comma and the A.
If the space had been put in, the comma would have landed at the right place.
I was waiting for them to do it.
Okay.
You get promoted to management, you
Anything on page 10? The only question I had on page 10 is, under 27, list of construction maintenance items, annual operating cost estimate that must be financed by the city or quasi-municipal districts. Solid waste disposal, I take it, is hauling garbage. That's not a city-paid-for service. It is in a lot of communities, and maybe this was copied from a community that did provide solid waste disposal, or is it referencing something other than hauling one's garbage?
I would take this to mean the amount of garbage going into the landfill, which is
How would it fix the landfill?
Oh,
right. So it would
Oh.
affect the landfill
So
and
it's
affect the municipal budget because
it's not the service of actually hauling it there, it's how much is generated.
right. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on page 10? Page 11. I don't know why I drew a line through 1A, final plan application shall be submitted to the CEO. Scratch that, I think I drew a line and then I think I changed my mind. Never mind. I read this too long ago to remember. Page 12, item H, the Aroostook Republican appears again.
Yeah.
And that same one was 2 prominent locations as well.
Oh, it was, used to be
Used to be
3.
3, now it's 2. Should it be 1?
Based on the prior chapters, yeah.
Oh, all done. Let me know when you're done with that, Austin.
Yep.
Item 2A, Registry of Deeds. Should we have a line through Northern?
Yes.
Yes.
Did I miss a northern?
Anything else for 12? Anything for page 13? Page 14. First paragraph under, well, this is interesting, I just noticed. Okay, we go 3A, 3B, and then back to 3A, then to 3D, so we don't have a C. And in the second A, the end of that paragraph should continue, planning board deems necessary. That space in between there should not be there. That's a continuation of the same sentence.
Yeah, that's word processing issue. Somebody
So A needs to be C,
Yep.
and delete
just get rid of the line space.
the
Yeah.
space between planning and board.
Yeah.
In the in the Word version, it's correct.
Oh, the one you're looking at? Or,
Right. Looks
Oh.
like something when it got copied was.
okay.
I see that in the version here, or that you're looking at as well. I see the problem that you just mentioned, but.
Anything else on page 14? Page 15, we need a period after city council in the middle of F. City council, period, then it starts, the planning board shall require. Well, we need a period and a space.
Right.
More audience participation. Welcome. Anything on page 16?
Back to 14, I noticed
Oh,
on the bottom,
excuse me?
under E on the bottom, it should be southern instead of northern office.
Oh.
Bottom line.
Yeah, bottom line of page
Oh,
14.
bottom line, northern office should be southern office. Good catch. Anything else? 14, 15, 16?
Oh, top of 15 has northern office too.
Oh. Is the northern office now just handle the valley,
Everything north of Caribou.
which is the valley?
Well, New Sweden.
Okay,
Not quite just the valley.
yeah.
The Lakes District.
No, that must leave a lot, that tells me the southern is covering a whole lot more geographic area than the northern.
Yeah, a lot more volume, too.
Population-wise, yeah.
Yeah, well. That it for 15? 16? 17? 18? 19? I think the comma under F, last line in the first paragraph, under cluster development, uses can also be clustered, but under different standards. I question the use of the comma there, after the word but.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, I have a question about exactly what is cluster development. Is cluster development, I mean, I've seen places in other states where, I call them row houses, where they're built on like 50-foot strips of land, and you can shake hands with your neighbor through the bedroom window. You know, there's 3 or 6 feet between the two houses. Is that what cluster development is, or?
The definition used in our ordinance is development designed to promote the creation of open space by reduction in dimensional and area requirements.
You reduce lot sizes and then leave open space, so the overall subdivision size is the same, but the houses can be bunched. Generally, with today's design practices, there's like little spokes and hubs of houses arranged in a circular
Right.
fashion, not in a hello in a row kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Okay.
So yes, you can shake hands with your neighbor,
Through the window.
right?
Maybe. It's not quite that bad.
Yeah. Okay.
You still have certain setback requirements.
Anything on page 19, anything else other than the comma? Page 20? Page 21?
Well, let's answer your question a little bit about clusters. If you read the basic requirements, it says you can only reduce the individual lot size by 25%, and that should alleviate some of your concerns.
Oh, I'm not saying I'm opposed to shaking hands through the window with your neighbor. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to get the, picture of it in my head. I mean, if some people are happy with that, that's fine.
No lot shall be, well, oh, never mind, never mind.
Yep. Okay, page 21. Page 22 or 23. Wow, moving right along.
Well, it's a good ordinance to start with, and I'm just making some tweaks.
Yep. Basically, the only substantial change was 2 prominent locations versus 1.
And then some
We'll
editorial.
make sure that that's consistent throughout.
Any other comments or questions about Chapter 13, this rewrite? Nope. Moving on to other business. Moving on to other business.
I want to, if I may,
Go right ahead, sir.
while we're on the air, publicly acknowledge Evan's accomplishment at the Maine Marathon.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Okay. You had an issue for other business?
The property located at 21 Bennett Drive used to be the Incredible Tattoo Place on Bennett
Oh, yes.
Drive and a few other things over the years. The owner of that property was in today. He's converted that to a residential type use or a motel type use, short-term, short rental leases, which is not allowable in the C2 zone without having gone through the site design review process. And depending upon what they actually want to do there. If it's a motel, that would be allowable in that zone, but the building location on the lot and the lot size itself doesn't allow for that doesn't allow for a motel on that piece of land. Single-family dwelling is not allowed in the C2 zone. So the only real option that would be available to him would be if the property was, in order to continue to use it as a residential zone or a residential house, would be if the property was rezoned to an R2 or an R2 or R1. Bordering it on the back side, so on South Park Street, it's R2 right there. So he does touch it.
What's on both sides?
There's a house on both sides.
Yeah, he's within probably, 5 feet from the edge of his building, probably to the property line of the abutting owner, going, let's say, towards Irving.
Right.
Yeah.
And are the abutting property owners residences that were grandfathered into a C2? So he's in a C2 surrounded by private residences.
Which are also in the C2. On the back side, it's residential zoning and residential uses.
We don't have a map. Oh, there we are.
I noticed that it had been strange single residence, but it didn't occur to me to worry about the zoning. Shame on me.
So, the property in question would be right here in the C2 zone, and on the back side it's R2.
Towards the front, bud.
But everything around it is commercial.
Should be closer to the front up there.
Uh,
There.
Is zone, when you say
Even
everything
across
around
the
it?
street is residential.
It's commercial, but it's
Commercial
residential
zone,
use.
but residential use.
Because they're all grandfathered in.
Right.
Now, I presume when that was changed from residential to commercial, it was to provide more spaces for retail and other storefronts or similar operations.
Right, and that honestly is a prime retail type location. The current parcel size is not ideal for something, but the corner of Bennett and High has nearly 11,000 cars passed it a day according to the last DOT traffic counts. So if a commercial developer wanted to come in, which is not completely out of the question, buy up those lots and do something else there, they could have that corner at some point in the future. So I told them I would broach the topic, I told the owner I would broach the topic with the planning board tonight to see if a zoning change for that parcel is something they'd even entertain, or if that's wanting to keep Bennett Drive, the main commercial district of the community, in a commercial zone. There are other uses he could put that building to. He said he could use it as office space or that type of thing. It doesn't have to be residential.
I'm not inclined to spot zone that little.
Yeah, especially right there where it's at.
I feel the same. I mean, granted, I mean, if it had been residential previously and continued to be, you know, if he would have gone from a private home to maybe an apartment rent, but he's gone to commercial use, and now he's trying to revert back, well, you can't go back, is my understanding.
Which is why I would have to
How long has he owned the property?
2005, I believe, is when he purchased it.
So it was built before he bought it.
Yeah,
Oh, it's been there forever.
That's been moved. That was an ATM that used to be down by where Subway is right
Oh,
now.
really?
Yeah, that's the old ATM building.
Really?
Building,
Yep.
I didn't know that.
oh, yes, in the,
I guess I do.
Yeah, it was a key bank passkey ATM.
wow, small building.
Oh, very small. It's been a sub shop, it's
18
been all
by
kinds of.
20, I think,
Yeah.
is the dimensions.
That would,
16 by 20.
Yeah, it's
surprised
not very
that would-
big.
I'm surprised that would qualify as an apartment. I mean, that's
Well,
less than
The
400
the other
square
thing
feet.
you would have to look at that building too is the egress, in order to meet egress for, you know, the windows
For an
and stuff
apartment?
like that.
Yeah. There's a path over there, though, it's,
But if, yeah,
it's in the bedroom.
It's my
Right.
understanding it's
yeah.
a studio
Which the whole thing
apartment.
would be a bedroom.
It's
Yeah.
it's the size of a hotel room, basically.
Do you want a motion on this, or a consensus?
Consensus would be fine, I think, if the council's willing to, or, sorry, the planning board's willing to entertain it or not.
We're
but
being
it's got-
groomed.
You might be.
Seems like the consensus would be not.
Well,
That
I-
wouldn't be
I
fair.
I would be opposed to rezoning it. I don't know
Yeah.
about,
As would I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not excited about that at all.
When something changes from commercial to residential, though, doesn't that require code enforcement? I mean, because I've seen some apartments around here that probably are grandfathered in, but there's no egress to escape if there's a fire in the stairwell. So, I mean, I would think that turning something residential would require
There should have,
something.
there should have been notification to the code enforcement office that that was what was going to happen.
has it already been done?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
being,
yeah,
it's being
somebody's
used that
done
way.
it.
It's been that way.
So he's coming to us after the fact?
Yep.
Okay. As a contractor in the community, I would think he should know the rules a little better. Anyway,
Think it was maybe gonna try to get under the radar?
well, I don't know. So you all set with that subject?
Happily Wayne, thank you very much.
Is there any other business?
I've got one thing. This ties back to, I think, the last daycare application we had with regards to the fence and stuff of that nature. Just because I did some homework and looked back, we did a daycare application form back in July of last year. We redid that at one of our meetings. The other part being the fence requirement, even though ours is more stringent than the state, what we have on the books right now says it requires a fence. And then during our discussion, we'd mentioned that, you know, we're gonna look at changing that as well. But we approved a daycare that doesn't necessarily meet what's on the books right now. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to others who have come before us with an application for something that we may be changing as far as zoning, that we denied on the principle that the way it's in our ordinance right now doesn't necessarily meet, you know, even though we're gonna change it, it's not meeting at this time when we approve it. I don't know if we could go back to those particular daycare applicants and say, you know, hey, look, we need to have a fence put up, you know,
I think that,
subsequently to that, because I mean, what we've done is approved something in violation of what our ordinances already are, even though that down the road we may be changing those. I mean, the one on Rush Street is a prime example. You know, we may have zoned that differently when we redo the zoning, but based on where it's at, they weren't able to put that apartment in there because of the way the zoning read.
getting back to my recollection is we opted not to require a fence because of the significant distance between the daycare and the play area and the highway. To say that, I guess, I'm questioning if what you're asking is an apples-to-apples comparison. I don't think it is, because I think that you have to look at the merits of each case, and I think that this place was,
But in-
over
in
200
the-
feet away from the road.
I didn't mark it down in the ordinance, but it says, I don't think it gives a size restriction regards to distance from the road, distance from a tree line or whatever. I think it states that a fence is required.
But does it say that with planning board approval?
I was gonna say, does the planning board have the discretion to waive?
I don't think I saw that in there.
Because I know we have the discretion to waive requirements on a number of things.
Because I do remember just that discussion about how far they were back.
Well, that was the
Right,
whole-
and that was one of the
whole
things that
thing.
came up.
That was the whole thing, is that this was over 200 feet from the road, which is,
I wasn't here, so I shouldn't interject, but how far from the woods line is it?
It was using the woods line as an abutting for the fence, if I remember correctly.
Oh, had I been here, I would have raised holy hell.
what do you mean, but what's your issue on the woods line?
I wouldn't want to be in the line of fire the first time the daycare person turns his or her back and some kid wanders into the woods because there was no fence.
We've approved other daycares with.
Well,
tree
and
lines.
that's the other thing that I didn't catch.
I thought that the fence that he's referring to is between the play area and the highway,
No, it's required a fence in general.
all around circumference?
Yeah, on page 914.
Fine, yeah.
We granted that
We did.
to renege on something after they've gone ahead.
Oh, I don't think you can.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, it says the facility shall provide a minimum of 75 square feet of outdoor play per child. Outside play areas must be protected by a fence at least 4 feet in height.
Does the planning board want to simply take the daycare ordinance out of order with the rest of everything and propose changes?
We can do that at our next meeting.
That seems like that's the only thing that's coming.
Because the
before
last,
us.
when we talked about the last time, a lot of the conversation centered around why we need more stringent certifications, applications than what the state does with their fire marshal and DHHS. And if I recall correctly, part of the conversation at that point in time was to simply require notification to the code enforcement office to ensure that it meets the zoning requirements, and that we receive copies of the approval letters from the state fire marshal and DHHS, and more or less leave it at that.
I mean, I don't think it would be a bad topic to cover. I mean, giving that, and then, you know, we should differentiate between whether it's in a standalone facility or whether it falls into a home, because if it falls into a home, it would fall under a home occupation, which still has to come before the planning board.
Have they ever been treated as home occupations?
I don't know,
for daycares?
but
I would
that's
doubt
that's the other thing that we haven't differentiated between the two, I guess. No,
Right. I could be wrong, and I certainly don't know all the history of the ones that have been approved in the past, but I would hesitate, or I would doubt that daycare facilities in the home have been treated as
right,
in-home.
and I don't think they have.
Right.
Well, home occupation is typically, you know, a beauty shop or.
Right.
Or an attorney or, you know, something, a dentist, you know, something
Right.
like that. I think the fact that you have rules that are specific to just daycare is raising the bar more than you would for home occupation. It's additional because now you're bringing a whole litany of things
Right.
into review above and beyond a home occupation. So I don't think you have to subject them to both standards.
Now, the fence thing, DHHS, say that right?
Yep.
They see a tree line as being a fence, right? I mean, that's what we made our decision on, right?
Right. And they
Yeah.
could require or mandate that people put in
Right.
fences if they believe
Right.
it's unsafe or they need more
Right.
protection. But
Yeah. And I remember Matt saying that I mean, to go by the DHHS. Yeah. Okay.
But that was just my concern, is that it was a non-conforming approval of what was there based on what we have on the books as it stands right now.
And if, yeah, so that's why I'm wondering if the planning board wants to
Wants
take this
to
piece out of
jump
order.
ahead?
Right.
I
and
say
just,
so. I say yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Let's make it next meeting's topic.
make it for the next meeting.
Speaking of which,
And can we get a copy of what the state requires too?
Oh, that's a
So
good
that way
idea.
we've got something to bounce it against, and
very good idea.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I don't necessarily see anything wrong with ours being the same, if not maybe a little bit more stringent, just, you know, given the area that we're in. You know, if you have tree line, I mean, like when we voted on this the last time, the only reason why I voted against it was based on, you know, that aspect of it. I mean, I have no problems with somebody coming and trying to do that. Just want to make sure that we're consistent and, or, you know, at par or maybe better as far as safety, as far as, especially with kids.
But at what point do we,
Does it become too cumbersome and,
right,
Yeah.
I mean, if DHHS says a fence is not required,
right,
at what point do we say no, a fence is required?
right.
So that's why the conversation last time kind of set around, you have to have your DHHS license, and in order to get that, if DHHS says you need a fence, you have to put a
Right.
fence in. So,
Yep.
Well, we were gonna yield to whatever DHS and the fire marshal, you know, approved would be our standard as well.
Right.
right.
And that way, if they make a change, ours will in theory change with it.
Well, and both of those involve an on-site inspection, whereas ours does not. I mean, we have the option to go out if we want, but typically we don't. And the fact that DHS or the fire marshal is looking at the physical property, assessing, you know, the individual characteristics of this particular application and saying, yes, this is good, well then, you know, I agree with what their eyes are telling them. Okay,
So I'm under the impression that the proposed changes would be to strike the majority of what's in our ordinance today.
Make a reference to DHS.
Yeah.
And simply require that we have a copy of the DHHS license and approval.
well, and that the language in our
Right.
ordinance states that you must obtain approval from DHHS and the fire marshal's office.
Yep. Which it does today.
Okay.
And we can reserve the right to inspect if we want to, but. Otherwise, it's gonna be a fairly straightforward ordinance.
Yep.
You have a question about next month's meeting?
No,
or-
just want to confirm that it'll be Wednesday the 4th,
Oh, that's what I've got.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other business?
Isn't it other now?
Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn?
I move
Oh,
that we adjourn.
Move, we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much.